quite easily to have a mixture of both within any archetype. Yeah. But for instance, what popped into my head is back to my own example where I have Taurus on the 4th house cusp, you know, and my perception of my nurturing, I was very close to my mother, and I was a very fearful, needy little child coming in, 8th house Pluto. And so my perception of my mother's nurturing was she worked for as long as I can remember throughout my childhood. So my perception of my nurturing from my mother was abandonment. She wasn't there, you know. And yet my mother's perception of nurturing is she worked so that I never had to wear shoes with holes in them like she had to. You know, so they're right there. My perception, her perception. So another example of how to use that, you know. And I look back on it now, you know, reflecting backwards on that Taurus on the 4th house cusp, and I realized how solid my mother was through all of my father's chaotic stuff. My mom was just right there solid. My mom is a 2nd house Pluto. She's a Taurus soul. And so she was always just steady Eddie through my father, Scorpio on the 10th house, through all of his emotional raging that he would do. So yes, there's the mixture of the two. Anybody else with that? Okay. So let's work with this. Let's work with this example a little bit more then, okay? As we were getting ready to take the break, we had Aries on the 4th house cusp. We had Libra up there on the 10th. And we started to hear from McCall, right? Am I pronouncing your name correctly? McCall. Sorry. Nobody goofs up all these Hawaiian names better than me. No worries. So, remember she started to tell us her parents divorced when she was very young and was very chaotic. There was a lot of anger. There was a lot of rage and all that kind of stuff. What else could anybody else come up with any things or anything that you want to share? Anything else that reflected back to you in this early nurturing environment? Are you a person who, when it starts to get emotional, can get flighty or run? That was her early environment. If it started to get emotionally intense, I'm gone, you know. And so she's, you know, part of your healing would be sticking around and walking through the emotional body and getting to the other side. Okay? That'd be something. Now, what I wanted to do next was let's add in the rulers. All right? So in this case right here, when we have Aries on the 4th house cusp, the ruler Mars. Mars is up here in the 8th house in Leo. Who would you say was your more nurturing parent, mom or dad?
Well, my mom was more dominant in my life because she had custody of us, but my dad is really, really, really loving. So it's kind of hard.
Mixture of both.
Life, but my dad was really loving when he was around, but it was very sporadic and not very often.
Okay. All right. So the nurturing parent flew the coop. Aries on the 4th house cusp. All right. But let's just work with it that maybe it worked both ways. Okay. So, and we can also then work with up here with Libra being the domineering parent. What do you think could be some of the things of the perception of the parenting with Libra up here on the 10th house cusp? Social would be a Libra thing. Here's one of the misconceptions about the archetype of Libra. You know, your traditional astrology will always want to tell you that Libra is very even, very balanced. And one of the things, if you really study this archetype of Libra, that you will many times see is the extreme of unbalance. Because Libra is trying to learn it. And so what that will sometimes turn out to be is the two-facedness of Libra. And so possibly a perception of the parents out there in the world as being very smiling and social and nice. And the moment they were gone, the bitch came out, flipped it around. Did you get those two faces with your mother that would go on? Mom would sometimes be nice, and then she'd turn and just be mean.
She wouldn't be mean, but she'd be very absent or withdrawn, or...
That would work with Libra too, the social side and the withdrawn side. That would be the Libra energy as well. Also, again, the classic with Libra is where things aren't balanced, but they're not fair in the giving back and forth. Did you have siblings?
Yes.
And where are you in the birth order?
I'm in the middle.
And who, older?
I have an older sister.
Older sister?
Her chart is really close to mine too.
Okay.
Hers, and I have a younger brother.
And a younger brother. So you were there in the middle. Sometimes when you put Libra up here on the 10th house cusp, it can also be that, the parents are trying to be fair, trying to divide everything up, trying to make sure that they're basically being fair with all the children. And what can happen on that Libra 10th house cusp is perhaps there's a perception that the parents were not fair. Maybe there was another sibling that had health issues, or a sibling that had emotional or mental issues, and so there was the troublemaker out of the siblings, and it seemed like parents were always putting more energy into that sibling, and where am I? Middle child, feeling like, the oldest and the youngest may have gotten more of the attention than you did. Okay, so you could perceive some of that parental environment then as not only with a parent there, not there, but the perception with the siblings as well that, again, there wasn't fairness involved, that somebody took more attention than you did. Okay? Whereas from your parents' perspective, with Libra on the 10th house cusp, they were trying their darndest, from their perspective, to really balance it out between the three of you. So there could be a perception of the child, perception of the parent. So you obviously can't speak for your parents, but do you relate to that? Does that seem to be where it is for you with that? Now, where are you today with both of your parents?
I'm just now creating a relationship with my dad, which has been good. So, really good experiences with him the last handful of times I've seen him, but he's been absent. I haven't spoken with him for probably 4 or 5 years prior to this. So he's just re-entering my life again.
Mm-hmm. And how about Mom?
Mom's always been there. You have a really challenging time with her, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for me to be around her.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's that battle. She's your mom and you love her, and very challenging.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. As I listen to this, it does make sense that Mom might be the more domineering parent, and here's the ruler of Libra, Venus, up here in this 10th house. So the domineering, authoritarian, I got to be in control. This is the way it's going to be done, And again, Libra smiling at it while she does it, And Aries down here on this 4th house cusp with the ruler Mars, 8th house, up here in Leo. Dad just left to go find himself, or Dad couldn't handle whatever, there could be many variables that are going on here, and we don't have Dad to question, but the ruler in Leo in the 8th house, the Leo energy would feel that, Dad had to find himself, Leo. I've got to take care of me. I've got to do something out there in the world. I got to be out there in the world. I don't have time to raise 3 kids. Okay, and so this, and from the parents, or from child's perspective, okay, the abandonment, 8th house, by dad. And Mars, Leo, 8th house, it could be, why won't dad see me? Why doesn't dad want to be with me? Leo, all that energy. And also in the 8th house, because of there's the abandonment, but if anybody can rise, what's that Scorpio, the traditional, the phoenix rising from the ashes, all those extremes, but if anybody can flip it around and do something with it, it's that Scorpio 8th house energy. So look at this reunion that's happening with her dad, 8th house. Not only the abandonment, but finding the long lost love. That many times is Leo, 8th house energy. And as she recovers that relationship with her dad, that's reigniting all kinds of emotional sensations within her, but also reigniting an ability for her to recover any sense of emotional loss, and giving you emotional new beginnings, Aries, 8th house, that are coming through. That then will let you come back up here and balance all this stuff with mom better. To just know, mom handled a lot to raise 3 kids on her own. So it gives you a different perspective of all that mom had to juggle up here and keep together. So doing this healing work emotionally with dad will surprise you at how well it heals things with mom and allows you to find your own peace and balance with mom, regardless of how she's going to be, even if she still tries to control your life. She doesn't trigger you so much anymore, so that you can have a more level sense of peace. So in other words, another one of my points is no matter what age we are, we're still going to evolve these archetypes. She will be evolving these archetypes her entire life. This makes sense? Getting this? Questions?
I have the question because we were talking about Pisces a lot. My dad is a Pisces and had alcoholism, and coming to understand why he did what, now as you're an adult, you can ask these questions and now you get like a real answer about why you did leave. And yeah, there's a lot more peace about that happening, but now it's causing a lot more resentment towards my mom because of hearing the other side of it.
Oh, flipping the switch. Yeah. Yeah, it will. Yeah. I can relate to that because, having my own, emotionally unstable father and my mom's Taurus down here seeming like a rock. I was in my 30s, I think it was, and I remember having this big aha moment. It takes 2. That my mom enabled my dad to stay that way. So recognizing that and creating that shift, I was raised by 2 Libra parents. So that Libra energy of, Libra can smile away while they're just going for the jugular. And we don't always recognize that about that Libra energy. Those are those extremes that can come through with Libra. But yeah, so you will have to continue to work through this as you do your healing with dad. It will surprise you with what it stirs up with mom that you then want to focus on coming through, and recognizing. And again, Libra on the 10th house cusp, that also brought through that whole, both of these, the Libra Aries archetype, together apart, together apart, together apart. Did they do any of that stuff back and forth? Or
a little bit. I was so young, you didn't really see much of it, but a little bit, yeah.
Right.
Is that a Pisces trait though, like the addiction, the alcoholism, the I can't handle it, I'm going to run and get out of here?
Yes, Pisces, 12th house Neptune, that's the classic with, it is the classic for addiction, traditionally. But there can be other signatures that show that, sometimes all your water signs can show that. Because water has no boundaries, so it has to run up against one. And a lot of time, addiction issues are substitutes for God. Okay? And again, remember that goes, if we want to look at substances all the way through the course of history, we used to have very sacred relationships with plant medicines. We don't have that anymore. And we used to use it for very ritualistic purposes. That was in nature, God Goddess's way of helping us accelerate our spiritual development is through the plant medicines. And most of you are probably young enough, you're familiar with all the different variations in which they have that today. We've lost touch with that kind of stuff. But again, anytime you see an addiction issue, you can almost relate it some way to Neptune, Pisces 12th, or the elements of water, okay? But it is someone who basically is not making the effort to find their spiritual connections, no matter what the evolutionary state is. And so I like to say, all my Sag and Italics gets very philosophical. Anything can be used or abused. Just like any of the 12 archetypes can be used or abused. I'm looking forward to my glass of wine later. But consciously recognizing that that's not my God. There's no substitutes for Source itself. So your dad may not have been in any type of evolutionary state or way of being conscious of knowing that's what he was doing. We so project forward generation after generation all of the woundedness. So there's probably lifetimes of rage in your dad's lineage. Okay? And so his Piscean sun way of dealing with it is to just deny it. And so the substance is used to deny. Okay? Quite fascinating. Lots into that type of an issue. But most addiction issues are substitutes for Source. And it's not just alcohol or drugs. The addiction issue can be it can be anything and everything. It can be set in front of the TV today. With the Virgo polarity to Pisces in the natural zodiac, you can be an exerholic, an exerciseaholic. That can, just running the body ragged. So there's many ways you can do addiction. There's physical, emotional, mental, spiritual addiction. Addiction exists on all 4 levels as well. So sorry, I don't mean to sidetrack Gemini Moon. But you getting this example? So you can then bring in the rulers and start getting more. Anything else? What's everybody else sparking with from what she shared? Is this working? All right. Somebody else with a 4th house cusp that we haven't used yet.
I guess, because mine was related, I have a question about
Yes.
where you have those 2 houses that are close there. Could each parent be a different house?
Yes.
So mine is Aries, Taurus, and the Aries just goes over in the 4th house, but that Aries felt like my dad, and then the Taurus was like my mom or something.
Yes. Yes, that could work too.
So vice versa.
Yep. What he was talking about is there's a sign on the 4th house cusp, and then the next sign that follows, that's probably on the 5th house cusp, yet there's still some of it in the 4th. That too could represent, both of the parents as far as the early self-imaging and emotional nurturing environment. Same thing with the 2 signs up here. They could represent both of the parents in regards to how you were taught to function in the world and mature. Yep. Yep. Someone else want to be one more example?
Leo.
Leo on the 4th?
And Aquarius.
Okay. And where's your sun? And where's Uranus? Her Uranus.
6th house, 23 Scorpio.
And what degree is the sun? Are these two opposite?
Yeah, 15 is the sun and 23 is Uranus.
Oh, nice example. All right. Sun's at 15 Taurus. Uranus is 23 Scorpio. Okay, so let's review here. Those planetary aspects, the cycle of phases and aspects. Remember, everything's compared to the sun, center of our solar system. So we could start with the sun at 15 Taurus. And if we went all the way around the zodiac, if we got to 15 Scorpio, that's 180 degrees, half the zodiac, right? Yet we go from 15 to 23, which is another 8 degrees. So this is an opposition, but it's full phase because it's 188 degrees. Follow how I just did that? All right? Now that's 8 degrees beyond exact. And so that's the separating side of the aspect. In a phasal understanding, that means she may have had a previous lifetime where Uranus was gibbous phase, the sun, approaching an opposition, or right at an opposition. So this means she has a better degree of integrating or balancing these polar planetary archetypes because it's 8 degrees past opposition. And so what would be the archetypes? This would be self-actualization and her ability to individuate.
She's got it square her north, or she's got it square her nodes. Her node's 25 degrees Leo is her north node.
In the 4th? We'll add them in for good measure. Where's her Pluto?
Her Pluto's in the 5th house, 19 degrees Libra.
And this was Scorpio, that was Taurus. This was 25 Leo, right? 25 Leo, and this was 25 Aquarius. All right, we got a couple of things to work with. Let's do this, if that's okay with everybody. Let's do the planetary method or the Pluto formula, okay? And then we'll come back and we'll look at this parent-child thing, all right? And then we'll add this moon and the Saturn into this chart. See? Lucky you. You don't have to learn it all. You just get to learn it for yourself. Am I goofing up the tape? So what we would typically do. Now here's what I'll do. I'll use example for you. Okay. So are you a native to Hawaii?
No.
Where are you from?
Ohio.
How long have you been in the islands?
Almost a year and a half.
A year and a half. So were you raised mainly in Ohio?
Mm-hmm.
Were you raised by two parents? Mm-hmm. They still together?
Yes.
Alive?
Yes, my father is very sick.
Cancer, health issue?
He has Alzheimer's.
Alzheimer's. Okay, all right. Did your parents raise you with a specific religion or belief system?
Kind of void of spirituality in general.
Okay, none. Okay. Do you subscribe to religion or belief system today?
Not an organized
Just trying to find your way through the chaos. Do you have siblings, and if so, where are you in the birth order?
I have a sister who is younger.
Okay, so just 2 girls. All right. How would you describe relationship with mom and dad as your relationship with mom, relationship with dad?
Relationship with my mother is very challenging. She's very controlling, and we've been working through that a bit.
Okay.
As far as with my dad, he's had Alzheimer's for 14 years. Before that, I was daddy's girl kind of thing, but he's very, he was a scientist, so very emotionally not necessarily there, but, or showing of it, but always knew that he loved me kind of thing.
Okay.
Very scientific.
Okay.
His nature.
Okay. Boy, I see mom and dad, both of these, as she's describing this. Okay. What's your educational background? What do you do for a living?
I have master's in business, but I teach yoga now, and I have an office manager job.
Okay. What's your relationship history? Kids, married, divorced?
No kids, never married, any of that.
Did you want kids? Do you want kids?
I don't have the need to procreate, no, but if I had kids, I would enjoy that.
Okay. What's the situation with relationships? Have you had long-term significant relationships?
I've had a couple, and I'm in a new relationship right now.
How long?
It's only been a few months.
Okay. You live together?
No.
Okay. Have you ever lived with someone before?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
We had about a 4-year relationship. It was the longest I lived with.
Why did it end?
Different directions in life.
Okay.
And
Who ended it? Was it mutual or one person?
I ended it in a sense, but it was pretty mutual. And he's one of my best friends still today.
Congratulations.
Yes.
That's good. That's Pluto and Libra. Okay. Anything else you want to make me aware of? You know, throughout the course of this, if anything pops in that you think might be relevant and you feel comfortable sharing, why don't you share? Okay? All right. See how I went? But that gave me a lot of background. It gave me some idea of recognizing this. Now, the next thing we'll start out with, or what we'll start out with, is, Pluto. So she's the Pluto and Libra generation, and individually she's a Pluto and Leo soul. All right? Now here's the thing about the Pluto and Libra generation. This is a generation of souls who have spent most recent past lives really trying to work their way through a diversity, Libra, of relation versus who I'm relating to. And that's why you can see these Libras start, stop their relationships. Sometimes you'll see a Pluto and Libra get married, they're pretty young yet, and they'll stay with that partner. For instance, if you see someone with Pluto in the 7th house, don't assume that they start relationships. Sometimes if they have Pluto in the 7th, they might marry, and they're enmeshed with that person, and they're with them forever. Okay? The Pluto and Libra generation seem to be speeding that up a little bit. They go through, not all of them. Sometimes they're monogamous, sometimes they're not. They seem to, in, out of relationships. But it's not an absolute. I know Pluto and Libras, they don't want to be in a relationship. And that's going to tell you that they're coming from relationship history in which there was some inequality, dominating, that they're like, no, walls are up, not going to go there. And then you'll run into Pluto and Libras who are so codependent. They're, they break up on Friday and Monday they have a new love they're living with. You know, so you find it all over the place in regards to relationships with the Pluto in Libras. But we have someone who's just related to us. How old are you?
30.
She's 30 years old, and she is not, you know, officially married yet. And she's told us that she's had one long-term person that you lived with for 4 years. Okay? So she's not falling on that typical Pluto in Libra, in, out, in, out, in, out. You know, and I've always got to be in relationship with someone. So right there, we're starting to fine-tune that Pluto in Libra situation, right? What's the lesson for all the Pluto and Libra souls on the planet? Aries polarity, they have to learn independence. One of the things, practical things that I like to tell the Pluto and Libras, in any situation in your life, you have to think, how would I handle this? And ask them to really ponder it if they could answer that question any way they wanted. What do I want? What do I want? What do I want? How would you handle this situation? And then you tell the Pluto and Libras, once you figure out what that is, then you got to go forth in that direction regardless of what anybody else says. They have to learn how to think for themselves. They have to learn that independence. They have to learn that spark of freedom that says, this is what's important to me and this is where I'm going to go. That's what they're here to learn, that Aryan freedom to break free versus all of that relationship history that they come through. Because what happens, the ruler of Libra is Venus, and that outer side of Venus, that Libra archetype can always recognize the other. What's the other? I know what that other person's going to think. I know what they're going to say. I know how they'll react if I do this. I know how they react if I say that. So, you know, that's where you get that Libra wishy-washiness. They're just so out there with everybody else that means that soul generation has got to just, pachoo, Aries. Okay? Not from isolation, though. They can't go off and do their own thing in isolation, Aries. They've got to still learn how to operate through all the relationships without losing the sense of self. That's the generational stuff. So, given what we've learned here, and we have some clues starting to come into us, we see that we are dealing with Pluto in the 5th house. We have a Leo soul. And what did she say? She's 30 years old and she doesn't have children. This is not always what you find, but that right there tells you this Leo archetype, you know, that whole archetype of children, parenting oneself, being the inner child within. You know, a lot of that starts to get involved. A Leo soul, here's the thing about Leo. Leo is the element of fire, and it is the element of creativity. It's ruled by the 5th house. This is the sun is the dispositor in this house. All right? And so we're talking about Pluto in the archetype of Leo, the sun in Leo. What about me? What about me? What about me? What about me? So can you see how that starts to take that Libra archetype? We're combining Libra and Leo with the soul. Does that now make sense? And that 5th house, Pluto, one of the things about Leo is when they're so focused on their own creativity, what happens is it creates a very subjective self-focus. They are the center of their universe. And when you have something in the 5th house, what it sets up is the polarity, the 11th house, which is the Aquarian archetype, which is objectivity, which is being able to see the other side. Pluto in Leo generation and the Pluto in the 5th house, those are the archetypes of, I say this very loosely, the starving artist syndrome. And what that means is who's going to notice me? Who's going to see what my talents that I've got to share with the world? And that subjective focus wants to bring it all out there. And what that Aquarian polarity says, you got to go over there and see what the world is about and see what the world needs and then see how your talents can fit in to the greater whole. That's going to be a Leo soul lesson, all right? But again, this 5th house Pluto is coming through Libra. So rather than the Pluto and Leo generation, who's going to buy my paintings, or who's going to find, notice my creativity? This is a Leo soul coming through the Libra generation. So what her thing could be, who will love me? Who will love me? Where's that special person out there that will love me? And what you tell this type of a soul, you are the one you're looking for. So that's where that whole principle of all that self-love, Leo, has got to come in on an inner basis. Because what can happen with the 5th house Pluto in Libra, they're going out there and they're looking at all these different types of people that they're interacting to, and all these potential lovers, and they're just pro and conning, doing the Libra thing, looking for which one, where do I think is going to be my best bet, Yeah. And what happens with that Aries polarity point over here in Aquarius? Who do you end up with? Yourself.
I just, before I met this guy that I've been seeing, I was dating myself for the last year. It's like my
Congrats. And you know what we want to say? Congratulations. Because you see how she's affecting her own soul's intent, her own soul's desires, and where she needs to go? Yeah. So now let's go the next step. Let's add on the South Node in Aquarius. That's the ego that this soul has developed from the past. And so in this South Node is in Capricorn, the 10th house archetype, and it's in Aquarius. First of all, if we got a 5th house Pluto or a Leo soul and she's got a South Node in Aquarius, does that tell us this soul has been trying to find some objectivity in the universe from previous existences? That means that 11th house polarity point is not unknown to this soul. That means they have some idea from past experiences. Okay, so this is the South Node is going to be the ego that the soul has developed in past lives. And so could we also perhaps surmise, all right, because got a master's education, okay, she's working on her own, she's functioning on her own, South Node in Capricorn, the ego of this soul has recognized that she has got to have some sense of responsibility for herself in the world. All right? Also, could easily be trauma signature, Aquarius, in the family of origin, trauma signature with the authoritarian parent, and perhaps even some type of traumas that have happened in the world of career in the past that might be affecting the abilities of this soul to strike out on her own with her creativity. So there is that question, is it all distorted? Is it all natural? Is it a combination of both? Most likely a combination of both. So this leads to the question, here's where you go, I got another question. Have you ever had trauma happen at work in this lifetime? Okay, all right. Do you have any traumas with your parents? Did your parents tell you to do as I say, or did they give you the freedom to do your own thing?
My mother has led me, as far as the career path goes, she's very controlling as far as that, and it's been very influential.
There we go. So there's another clue that we're getting up here with the South Node in Capricorn, that we have a controlling authoritarian parent, and so we've had her say that before about mom. And now when we've asked her career questions, because that South Node is there, which means there's a history there. There's a history that this soul has developed through experiences of the ego and through the soul itself in her creativity. I mean, if you got a 5th house Pluto and the south node's in the 10th, you can almost see, you know, there's creativity, career. You can start to put that stuff together. But we've also got, again, a couple of times now where mom says this is the way you're going to do it. Mom says blah, blah, blah. So we might be getting some clues here as to who the authoritarian parent is. Here's something to understand about the archetype of Uranus, Aquarius in the 11th house. Another fascinating archetype. In evolutionary astrology, it rules the individuated unconsciousness. Every soul has its own individuated unconsciousness. What's in that unconsciousness? 3 things. The past and all is detail of each and every lifetime we've ever lived. It's where we go when we access hypnotherapy, past life regressions, etc. It also contains the present that we try to suppress via Saturn, the individuated consciousness. Saturn and Uranus go back and forth between what we're aware of and what's underneath. Saturn tries to stuff it down, Uranus throws it up. Okay? The 3rd thing is Uranus also contains a blueprint of the future, where our own soul is trying to individuate and spark and evolve into. So that archetype of Uranus with the past, the suppressed present, and the future can have a lot of stuff that comes churning up to the surface, and how it comes up is in a very sporadic fashion, not in a nice ABC, this is what it is. And so that's why Uranus can be so chaotic and why we have to make sense of Uranus, Aquarius in the 11th house. All right? So another thing from saying that with Uranus, Aquarius in the 11th house is many times when you see one of those 3 archetypes, you have a certain amount of energy. Or in this case, if we look at the archetype of Aquarius, we'll have the souls who are trying to defend the past and go to the Saturn side of the equation, and nothing is as good as it was yesterday. And then you have the other extreme of Aquarius, which is the avant-garde, which is trying to throw it all off and just go towards the future. And then you have what's called approximately the 3rd in the middle that kind of go back and forth and back and forth. And so when you're working with evolutionary astrology, you've got to kind of, whenever you see the archetype of Uranus, Aquarius, or the 11th house, you kind of got to be that astrological detective and kind of discern where is the soul at. Now, a lot of the clues will come from the evolutionary state of the soul. So as we're listening to this person who has come in, and we're wondering where they're at, you know, we also then are listening to the clues. Are they consensus? If we have a 5th house Pluto in Libra in consensus, no one will marry me. No one will love me. When will my husband show up? You individuate this. First stage individuated is going to be thinking that, or they could be married and wanting to divorce and don't know how. I want to leave my husband and I don't have the courage. Second stage individuated. I want nothing to do with relationships. Been there, done that, not going to do it. You know, third stage individuated. For the last year, I've been dating myself. Okay? First stage spirituated. I've recognized that the first relationship I got to have in my life is whatever I have determined Creator to be. See how we boom, 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 boom? It's not an absolute, nothing is. But see how that helps? Okay? So we may not be quite there yet, but there's clues, there's strong clues that this is an individuating soul. Okay? We know that much. Most of the time you don't have clients come unless they're, first stage individuated. Those are the ones, if you're a practicing astrologer and, oh man, I really want this person to come to you and I'm going to give them a gift certificate for their birthday. I'm like, oh great. Because they show up, that first stage individuated or transitioning from third consensus to individuated. In my experience, many times they show up as the gift certificates. And if they stand you up 3 times, I go back to the person who gave me the gift certificate and said, they're just going to have to pay for it when they're ready. So anyway, don't mean to sidetrack, but then I wanted to kind of help you with that. So, getting this? So back to this, ego of the past. And sorry to take so much time, but is this working with this? So we know that this is a soul who's wanting to spark, who's wanting to find out who they are in the midst of everybody else. And we know that they have some sense of self-responsibility to them. Perhaps with Aquarius on that south node, could there be some unconscious past life trauma when they've tried to really go out there creatively? That kind of backfired or got aborted, so they really want to do this, but they kind of hold themselves back. And they'll stay in what's safe, 10th house. Ruler Uranus, Aquarius. Ruler of Aquarius, Uranus. Down here, Scorpio, 6th house. Now that's going to tell us that there has been kind of Scorpio stuff in work. Because this is an earth house, this is an earth house. Okay? So you can, from that earth triune, you've got a double signature of work here, and you almost got a double signature in traumas here, okay? So we're starting to recognize that, this is a very creative soul. But they've been traumatized in the past experiences, and the ego from the past has gone, I can't step out too far. It'll hurt. Scorpio. And yet, polarity point over here, in the 11th house, the soul has to learn how to break free. 11th house. Decondition, liberate, Aries, strike out on their own, the very thing they're afraid to do. And so, where is the North Node? Down here in the 4th house, in Leo. Here's another Leo signature. Where is the Sun? Over here in Taurus in the 12th house. What would you say that this is the development of the ego that has to take place? Put that North Node down there in that 4th house, and we just got to go, the more that you work to internalize your self-love and just find the ability to try, no matter what, then you're going to start, 4th house is Cancer, you'll find that you'll start to move forward. Cardinal signs, cardinal houses, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So this is a soul who, if they're ready, they just throw it all away and move across the halfway across the planet. Or they just finally get to the point where they go, that's it, and they walk away from the job, or they walk away from the relationship. But then they've got to keep this going, to keep this evolutionary intent of the soul going, they've got to consciously develop the ego. And in this case, North Node in Leo, 4th house, I love me, 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 I love me. I'm just, really kind of going, it's okay, it's okay. And then you put that ruler Sun over there in Taurus in the 12th house. To whatever degree they would feel comfortable, Taurus, in developing their spiritual belief systems and growth. Okay, so they've got, what this ultimately signalizes, okay, is that they have got to find their inner resources. Inner resources. It's a signature that if they're ready, that inner resource is no substitutes for God, Goddess. Because what could happen here is this Taurus Sun could keep thinking another relationship or another job or another this, or another that, another Taurian possession or materialization, is going to turn out to be that magical 12th house thing that then makes them feel self-love, that then makes them feel like they're really free and sparking their independence. Okay? And so this would be a soul that you could then counsel. There are no substitutes for God. There are no substitutes for Goddess. And for that, and then you could also just tell a soul like this, finding source energy in your life is as simple as listening to your own heart. How do you feel? How do you feel? How do you feel? That's what moves this ego forward. How do I feel? How do I, Leo, feel? 4th house. And then that's what can help them move beyond, putting another material thing there as a substitute. Does this make sense?
Resonates, for sure.
Yeah.
Can I
Okay.
ask a quick question? How did you feel 14 years ago when you learned of Dad's condition? Was it 14 years ago?
Yeah,
That was a big moment in time, wasn't it?
yeah,
Mental trauma.
yeah. That was definitely a big time.
Yeah, we could go into the transits and all that stuff. Let me quickly do this. We have Uranus square the nodes. Depending upon the minutes, we might have Sun potentially square the nodes. When you see any planet square the nodes, if it's the Sun, you don't assume it's a skip step. It's one of the variations to the rule. When it's the Sun, you have to do the observation course for a soul in any given lifetime. And so you want to observe how they are going back and forth, okay? Are they making the efforts toward the deep self-love? Or every time they have to live by themselves and learn to love themselves, does a 5th house Pluto in Libra lapse back to who will take care of me? So you start to have to ask some questions to fine-tune this, okay? This will be further supported by the fact when you're looking at a planet square the nodes, you start with the planet and you go clockwise, that's the mean motion of the nodes, backwards through the zodiac, and you get to the first node, and it's the south node. This would be the resolution node for the Sun if it was skip steps. Because this is 15 degrees, if we went all the way back to 15 Aquarius, it would be exact. So what we have here is an approaching square. It's going backwards with the nodes. So this is actually a crescent phase square. You go backwards with the phases when it's the nodes. Okay, this is some advanced astrology. Or intermediate. You guys following this? And so what we've got is an approaching square to the nodes. So you would want to tell the soul that, especially, this is the ruler of the North Node, and yet this is in 12th house Taurus. You would want to tell them, you do recognize that no matter what happens in your life, you are responsible for yourself. That's how you would counsel any possibility of a skip step or any approaching issues where we create skips. Here's the rule of thumb. When the transiting nodes square a natal planet, you want to deal with what's going on, or that could potentially create a skip step in a future life. And what happens? Every 19 years, the transiting nodes create two times, because there's nodes on each end. 2 possibilities with each planet of not dealing with issues and creating skip steps. But that also says that every 19 years, when transiting nodes square a natal planet, you have multiple opportunities to work through those issues. Moon and Gemini, this is a lot of stuff. Okay? All right? And so again, back to this example, here's the other thing about Pisces, Neptune in the 12th house. Because it's the last archetype, it means ultimate responsibility in order to have ultimate freedom. Because what will happen with Neptunian confusion, Piscean confusion, I'm the victim. Okay, this is happening to me, at me. And what Pisces, Neptune, and the 12th house all have to recognize, if it's in your world, you have some role in co-creating it consciously or unconsciously. And so with this sun in a potential or actual skip step, this soul, you would need to let her know that there are no victims. Sun in the 12th house. Okay? And she could get, you would have to observe, correlate if she's stuck in any sense of victimization. Sun in the 12th Taurus, stuck. Victimization, 12th house. And so the sun, okay, south node was the last node that crossed over the sun. And so this is the resolution node if that's the case, and that's recognizing you have to accept all responsibility for yourself. Okay? That makes sense? Because this sun here in Taurus, in these skip steps, we could have a soul who feels like, you know, the victim of circumstances, or nobody loves me enough. You know, what happens with Leo energy? What will happen with the 5th house Pluto? You know, the bottomless pit. No matter how much someone may love them, it's never enough. And that's where the expansion of consciousness with the Leo or 5th house archetype is. You have to turn that in, and you have to fill up your own vessel of love. Okay? Uranus over here is at 23, Scorpio. And so you start with Uranus and you go clockwise to the next node, and it's going to be the north node at 25. If it was 23 degrees, then you'd be exact. So in this case, it's applying. Okay, but it's square the nodes, but this is applying, which means that it's going to be crucial this lifetime, because this is applying square to this resolution node is applying square to the sun. This resolution node is applying square to Uranus. So it's crucial that this soul gets this lifetime. And here's the gift of astrology to explain this to them, so they don't come back the next lifetime and Uranus is exact square the sun, square the nodes, excuse me. Okay? And so, what's Uranus? Deconditioning, liberating, breaking free from the past, individuating. Oh, I forgot that detail. Consensus evolutionary state is Saturnian, Saturn. Individuated evolutionary state is Uranian, Uranus. The spirituated evolutionary state is Neptunian, Neptune. Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. Conform, break free, spiritualize. Okay? So, Uranus in Scorpio, this is a generation that signifies emotional betrayals of trust. Scorpio, the committing relationship planet, the sign, the marriage sign in astrology. Okay, Libra's dating, Scorpio's marriage. Libra dates, Scorpio consummates. So Uranus and Scorpio generationally tells us that soul with emotional betrayals of trust. You see Pluto in Libra, Pluto in the 5th house, you kind of then know that. And so this soul is going to have to liberate through any sense of victimization in intimate relationships. And so she could go back. What this can signify is a soul who's went back and forth between taking care of themselves and feeling really needy when it comes to love. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You know, it gets too intense or it gets too painful in relationships. Fine, I'm just going to go live by myself again. You know, and then she gets so lonely and, okay, I'm just going to jump in because, man, it's really there and it's sparking and I feel so much emotions with them. They've got to be the one. You know, so, you know, this is how this can be. There can, you know, so and look at how this is 10th house, 4th house, you know. The 10th house that, you know, isolates, Aquarius, tries to be mature, yet they have not developed the emotional body or inner security fully, and so there's still that neediness that will come up there, 5th house. So this soul's path to really breaking free is, for Uranus, this resolution node down here in that 4th house, self-love, self-love, honoring the emotional body. And it would be, you know, this would be the inner child, doing the inner child work. And then that's what liberates her and really lets her, you know, be able to fill up her own vessel with love. Instead of continuing to draw in intense relationships, Scorpio, in which she feels some sense of victimization. With Uranus square the nodes and Uranus in Scorpio, there's going to be a certain amount of karma mates that she's going to draw in to try and heal this. Karma mate, Scorpio. Okay? So the karma mates in which you have this sense of victimization, okay, you're going to draw in. Now, as I've listened to this, here's another observation correlation thing. This same archetype right here, this Uranus in Scorpio in the Virgo house, this could be the victim, or this could be someone who, as I like to say, picked up the sword. Scorpio, Uranus, oh yeah, let me show you, you know. But as we observed, correlated with this person, what did she tell us about relationships? You know, she hasn't went through a lot of them, and the one that she had a 4-year relationship with, they were able to part as friends. So this is giving me some clues here that she might be more on the victimization end of things rather than I'm going to fillet every one of my exes a new a-hole. Okay? So that's, again, little clues that as you become that astrological detective to listen to that with. All right, that was quick. Quick, sorry to take so long. But does that work? Do you resonate with this?
Yeah, completely.
Okay.
All stuff I've been discovering, yeah, that I'm working on. Yeah.
So now you can have some of this planetary method, chart interpretation, Pluto formula come through. Trinity of the past, Trinity of the future. Planet square the nodes. Okay? All right, so where are we on tape?
20 minutes.
Okay, so let's now go back to parent-child dynamics, okay? And let's work with this a little bit longer. Now, as we've kind of worked with this chart a little bit, or as we've kind of observed, correlated, and heard some of her feedback, I get the impression that the more nurturing parent was probably father, and the authoritarian parent was mother. Okay? Do you feel in your early environment that your parents did they acknowledge you creatively? Okay. So again, we're working from her perception of her parental environment. When you find Leo on the 4th house cusp, what can you have? You can have a child with their emotional self-image development of being the bottomless pit. Who will love me? 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 Okay? And so sometimes when you see that Leo there on the 4th house cusp and the parents do not acknowledge them, it can be an indicator that this is a soul that has to learn how to love themselves. We're not even counting this. We're just looking at Leo right there on that 4th house cusp. Now, when most of us come in, we don't remember why we came here. We have all these grand ideas, and then we come through that birth canal. And so, this is something then that, this soul gets to reflect upon throughout her life when she comes back to who will love me. So now that she knows with Leo on this 4th house cusp, in a nice little class like this, oh, I got to learn to love myself. Okay? And then you can look back on this, and if you would actually go back to mom and dad and ask them, they would say, are you the old, remind me again, are you the older or the younger? You're the older. Oh, you were the first child. You were the apple of mom and dad's eye, even though they may not have expressed it the way you wanted to see it. Okay? You were like their creation, Leo. They were probably just totally amazed at you. But that's their perception of you. Okay? And their perception of how they nurtured you was like, wow, we tried to, give this child everything and tried to push this child. And Leo on the 4th house cusp, could be parents who nurtured you and projected onto you everything that they wanted to do, but they didn't get to. Okay? Oh, so she's going to go out there and do what we didn't get to do. And that could be some of their nurturing projections that they made onto you. Not to say that it didn't happen up there. If we have that ruler of that 4th house cusp up there, Sun in the 12th in Taurus, then again there might be some validation that they did not recognize her. Because the ruler up there in Taurus, they could have been too busy just trying to pay the bills. Maybe there was some type of addiction issue, or maybe there was some type of an abandonment issue. Or maybe there was some type of religious conditioning that said, what could you do? I mean, with that signature, spare the rod, spoil the child. That's the Taurus, the physical end of it. Or they could have not been acknowledged. You could have had parents who were not acknowledged for their own unique special talent. So they were totally without the tools, Taurus 12th, to be able to give that to you, depending upon their background and their environment. So this is something that you can explore. You see where this is coming from? You see, does this make sense with this? So we have this self-image then with Leo on the cusp that could be fragile, depending upon how that early loving or non-loving environment was. And again, with the Taurus sun, there can be the material stuff might have been there. But this was a soul who wanted it on the deep emotional levels. And perhaps the parents weren't capable of it. Consensus parents weren't evolved enough to tell the child how special they were. And they may have felt that way about the child, 12th house, but they didn't share that with the child. Does this fit?
That last part fits really well. Just given everything materially that I could possibly need and beyond, but they were not emotionally available whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sun, Taurus, 12th. So now let's look at the child's perception of the parental authority and how the parents were raising this child to go out there and function in the world. So we have Aquarius up on the 10th house. What can come from that archetype of Aquarius? Again, remember those three areas of Aquarius. The past, conform, somewhere in the middle, break free. You had a question?
Yeah, on the second one, on the rules of the individuated unconsciousness of Aquarius.
Yes.
What was the second present one?
The second was everything in the present that we don't want to deal with. Saturn, we suppress into the... Saturn tries to always push whatever's uncomfortable down into the unconsciousness. And Uranus is the container when Saturn does that. Another one with Uranus is and this is a classic with Uranus, Aquarius in the 11th house, is unpredictability. It's air. And yet, and so again, because we've got all this stuff going on, the past, the future, what's muddled in the middle, and it gets very chaotic. All this information, all this energy. And so when you put Aquarius up there on the 10th house, the authoritarian parent could be unpredictable. They could be a friend, Aquarius, one moment, and then lapse into the Saturnian authoritarianism the next moment. Okay? Break free and go out there in the world, but you got to do it this way. And that was mom, right?
That was mine.
Yeah.
Is that perceived expectations of others, or
Can be.
what the group would want? Society?
Yes, because your Uranus, Aquarius, 11th house starts to get in, that's where the tribe is. That's where the social groups are, you can start to see those traditional words that come in. We all form those like-minded groups that we connect into,
So mom's like-minded group.
I want you to be successful, but here's the ways you can do it. And that's what she herself said. Mom wanted her to go out there and be creative, but mom said, here's the perimeters. And that can be the Saturn side of Aquarius.
Conditioning from her group.
Yes, from mom's group. Yes, that'd be the way of doing it. Did mom work outside the home?
Yeah, she was a complete feminist woman in the workplace.
That fit. And what happens when somebody gets Alzheimer's? They can't remember anything anymore. The mind goes. Yes? What else? They become childlike again. Somebody's got to take care of them. They can't do it on their own. Here's Leo in the 4th house. Okay? So you see how the signatures fit. Doesn't mean every time you see Leo in the 4th house you've got a parent, or Aquarius on the 10th house. It doesn't always mean you're going to have a parent with Alzheimer's. But it fits.
But doesn't Aquarius also to do with memory as well?
Yes.
Long-term memory.
Yes.
So that's
Yes, and
maybe the father had Aquarius influence there too.
yeah, and that's where you can see it. It's not always an absolute. Father could have been brilliant and lost his mind. And
Didn't you say he was a scientist? He was a physicist, yeah, he's very specific.
there you go. Yeah, there you go. See, that's why it was like paying attention to those clues, which one goes where, or even both of them go there. You can go back down here to the 4th house, and mom was the feminist, and she was so much into, what did the early feminists do? They were mostly Pluto, and a lot of them were Pluto and Leos. What about me? What about my creativity? I am more than a wife and a mother. I've got to get out there and do something. And so there was the abandonment by mother because mother was too going out there doing her own thing.
Well, I'm also thinking about the sun in the 12th house, maybe that father, 12th house, not being there.
Yep, father, this is also another symbol of father, just like moon's the mother. And so this could be father is absent. He's physically there, but he's not there. Now, the next thing that I want to add on, because you see we got the signs on the 4th and the 10th house, and we've got their planetary rulers that we fit in. What about Moon and Saturn? We haven't worked with them yet. Where's your moon? Will you help tell me where her moon is?
Her moon's 15 Capricorn, 8th house.
In the 8th house?
Yeah.
And where's Saturn?
Saturn is 20 Virgo, 4th house.
All right.
The North Node is like right on her IC, and then Saturn's like right before the 5th house. So on either end of the 4th house.
Saturn's in Virgo, but what degree?
20.
Saturn at 20 Virgo. Okay. All right. So the moon and Saturn are now just going to be a furthering of these archetypes, all right? So just as we've been learning, this 4th house is the early environment. It's the emotional self-reliance. It's the self-imaging that we adopt from the early environment. Moon, Cancer, 4th house is the same archetype. So the moon is always going to be the self-image that we are developing on an emotional level in this lifetime. It's the emotional body in the current lifetime. All right? And the self-imaging is always an emotional process. We've got Mercury with the left brain, Jupiter with the right brain. We have Mercury with the conscious mind, Uranus with the unconscious mind. We've got a lot of planetary signatures on a mental basis. This moon, this is the emotional barometer. This is going to be that emotional bottom line. But so the moon itself will symbolize the most nurturing parent. It's not always traditionally mother anymore. The most nurturing parent. It will symbolize, again, that emotional self-image that we are developing, the emotional body. And that emotional body, look at the moon's travel through the zodiac once a month. I like to say, every month, the moon makes every possible aspect it can make to every other planet. And you wonder why none of us are emotionally stable? Here we go. You know, look at the moon in Gemini. It took me an hour to go, where is my brain? I have all these Sag planets. Why can't I think and function and talk like I'm used to doing? And I'm going, where's the moon? Where's the moon? Where's the moon? Somebody goes, Gemini. And I go, oh.
Waxing the full tomorrow, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right. We got the full moon coming up, too. Yeah. We're excited. I'm going to be on the beach. But so you see with the archetype of the moon, okay? It's the archetype of the emotional body in the current lifetime. And the archetype of emotional self-reliance. Emotional self-reliance. That's the lesson of Moon, 4th house, and Cancer. Saturn is the archetype of the individuated consciousness. Or as we like to say in EA, the structure of consciousness. Saturn is how we mature as individuals and learn how to function in our world, in our groups, in society. Saturn is the archetype, and when I say Saturn, I mean Capricorn 10th house too. It's the archetype of self-responsibility and self-determination. And those are deeper words for career. We're only going to go as far in our career as we have the self-responsibility to accomplish, as we have the self-determination to accomplish. What are we trying to do in career? We're each trying to take charge of our life in some way and be who we want to be. Saturn is the structures of that. But Saturn is beyond that. I mean, this is why, again, archetypes are, planetary archetypes, expressions in consciousness, an archetype that has multiple meanings. The individuated consciousness is the boundaries of space-time. Saturn's the authoritarian planet, not always the father, but it's the boundaries, you know, sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. These are all the visible planets to the naked eye. These are all the conscious planets. Beyond Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, unconscious. So Saturn's the boundaries of what we can grasp and make sense of and function and put in our world. Okay? So you recognize these archetypes? When you put the Moon and Saturn together as a planetary pair, certain planets will work together as what we call planetary pairs. Venus and Mars, that's always love and relationships. Saturn, the Moon and Saturn, this is how each of us are looking at our own emotional development and how we go out into the world with it. It's how we all take our own self-imaging process and function as an adult. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take a break and we're going to come back and we're going to look at the phasal relationship of the Moon and Saturn, because that will tell each of us how we're in process of doing that.